amendments, additions? Do you want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So.
All right, all in favor of approving the agenda? Any opposed? Okay, so let's move on to the meeting minutes. Take a couple of minutes to look over those.
One thing I think that would be helpful just in the name of sort of transparency is if to the meeting minutes, we could add the notes that were posted on the wall on all the posted notes. We could just stick them in the end.
Yep.
That'd be great.
I just sent a message from David Bradley that he is so sorry to miss today. He just had a mishap in the parking lot on his way over.
Okay.
Mishap sounds not major, so not tragic, yeah.
Frustrating.
He's okay.
Yeah.
Amendments, the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the addition of the notes of each of the subgroups from the last one.
Get a second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting minutes are approved with the addition of the full subordinates that were taken. All right, so today what we're gonna move into is, this is really majority subcommittee work throughout the day. We'll reconvene at the end of the meeting just to get any report outs from each subcommittee. There are kind of 4 things that I would like for you to be thinking about or looking at as you break into your subcommittees. So there is a document, this is also in the Google Drive, but I've printed out copies for you today. So you have access to it. This will be an evolving document. This document includes a summary of all the interviews that I've had with the task force members. It includes any interviews that I've had the honors to task force members based on your recommendations. It will eventually include the focus group notes. So from the recommendations that I got from folks when we were doing the interviews, some of them I have gone and done one-on-one interviews because they're considered like, you know, a person who can provide in-depth information on maybe a suggested solution. But then there were also some that were just like kind of generally, we'd like to know where people in our community stand on small business development, or we know the SBDC and SCORE and Goodwill are all doing stuff. Let's have a conversation with all those people. And so we have some focus groups scheduled for this week on Wednesday. I have 2 groups scheduled, both focused on small business development. And on Thursday, I have 2 scheduled for worker empowerment. So so this Thursday. And you can see on the very last page of the document I just handed out to you who was invited to those. And again, those are based on the recommendations that I received from you all when I had the individual interviews. So those are happening this week. If you would like me to add you onto the invitation, let me know.
Did we get invitations or did I just see all that scheduled?
I sent invitations to the 2 of you co-chairs.
Okay, okay.
Yep, and you're welcome to attend or just awareness. As the co-chairs that those have been scheduled. You'll also see that there are 3 interviews pending where invitations have been sent and I'm waiting to hear back and or to schedule with those people. But those first few pages are, the first 2 pages are the issues, needs, and gaps that arose both from the exercise we did last time. So all the whiteboard stuff is included on there, as well as interviews.
Perfect. For the 15th, what time is that meeting?
I'll share that out in just a moment. Yep. So the first page, issues, needs, and gaps from the task force member interviews. The 3rd page are some solutions that folks have suggested during those interviews. There was also some considerations, just kind of that weren't related specifically to recommendations of problem needs and gaps, but were more, hey, we need to keep in mind these things as we're going about our work. So you'll see some notes on that. And then that's when we get into the interviews and then eventually the focus groups. So for the focus groups, the small business development focus groups, they're at 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. via Zoom. Same thing with the May 16th for worker empowerment. We have one scheduled at 8:30 and at 4. I will say for the small business development, the only person who's RSVP'd for the 8:30 a.m. is my aunt from Athens-Clarke County. I may ask her to come to the 4, see if she's available for the 4 o'clock instead of the 8:30, since she's the only one. If not, we'll have a one-on-one interview and it'll be fun. But I'm just sharing that with you. As for the worker empowerment, I do only have one at this point who has RSVP'd yes for the 4 o'clock. But I think that could be a viable one-on-one interview. So probably just keep both of those going. So I'll probably be reaching out to my aunt to ask if she wants to switch to the 4 o'clock or she just wants to stay at 8:30 a.m. for the small business development. So that's the additional information beyond what we've already talked about in this room. And so you'll see with the subcommittee work, what I'll ask you to do is just do a review. So whether you want to do that, kind of on your own for a few minutes, just to read through all the notes and then have some good conversation around it. And from what you read then, I'd like for you all to start prioritizing and really coming up with what are some of those goals or problems that we really want to focus on here. So if you remember last time I handed out kind of that grid, you have access in the Google Drive to an electronic version where you can start to fill that out. As you're working through that, if there's additional input that you're realizing you're needing, it's kind of coming up with that and then figuring out your work plan. Because if you recall, we're on a tight timeline here and we need to start getting traction on the recommendations. But you might also, so what I did, this is just a very rudimentary way of potentially thinking through how you might start to divide. Because I don't know that you'll be able to get all your work done in this physical space and in this physical time. And so this might be just a way that you can think about things and assign tasks to people. Whether it's gathering more information or it's actually drafting up the goals and the strategy, whatever that might look like. That requested assistance column is for you if you're like, yeah, we've got these things that we need to do, but we're gonna need some help. It's not something we can do on our own. You might need you, Cara, to help us out with that, or Chandra or someone else that might need to tap into the conversation about that. So I'd like for you to come up with a work plan. Our next meeting is scheduled a week from today on May 20th. And then our next meeting after that is on June 3rd. But it's come to my attention that there may be a good majority of folks who can't come to the June 3rd meeting. Is that correct? There's some kind of worker, there's something going, there's like a June 3rd meeting, I think, Ilka, that you had mentioned.
Next time should start on June 3rd.
Where I think,
Yeah, we've got.
that's not what I was even.
That's a Monday.
Yeah, that's the kickoff day, right? Yeah.
We have our voting meeting on June 4th, but not on the 3rd. I don't know.
Okay, so we may keep the June 3rd meeting then, and then we have one on June 10th. So we really have up to 3 meetings to finish this work. But then you can work outside of those 3 meeting times. But that's why by the end of leaving here today, I'd like for you to kind of come up with a work plan. What needs to happen between now and June 10th for you to get a set of recommendations and for you to fill out your.
Okay, let me, I'm Johnny come late, spoke into somebody else, stepped in, somebody. The ultimate goal, give me three goals and outcomes that you want.
Yeah, so what we're doing is ultimately we need a set, so that sheet that I gave you all last time.
Right.
That looks like that. We need one for the entire task force. So each subcommittee is coming up with their thoughts on that. And then we're gonna have to consolidate it down to maybe 3 to 5. So what you're doing is you're identifying a goal, the problems that are addressed as a result of it, strategies, for how you will get there, a description for that strategy, and what you anticipate might be the components of that. If you want to do a little bit of digging around, Sally can't be here today. In the group that she's on, she's already started to kind of fill out a sheet on her own, because she's like, won't be there, so I'm gonna try and get ahead and get my thoughts in the way, so that might give you a little kind of glimpse into how you might think what is expected and what we need.
But essentially, we're making recommendations to the mayor and commissioner about workforce development and business development, and how you use the ARPA funds to support those.
So make the recommendations, but you just said fund, magic word, you're funding, because if you don't have any funding for it, you get this stuff.
$4 million.
$4 million.
ARPA funds has to be allocated.
But we're also not fully restricting ourselves to the 4 million. If we anticipate it'll go beyond 4 million, Ilka's office will be using any recommendations to help inform their strategic plan for the next 5 to 7 years.
And to clarify, there's not definitely $4 million.
It's not.
At the same time, which I'll use as an opportunity to point out that the chamber is presenting its presentation of its findings and ask to the mayor and commission at our work session tomorrow, which is during the day. And it's the third one. I think this work session starts at 12 at the school district. And it's a third one. There's 2 ones that are short. I think they're short, but it'll probably be about 12:30, I would think, that we would be talking about this and we'd see it. So we haven't really seen it either. And so we're not sure what the ask is. And then also I
And
would.
what the chamber request
Mhm.
has the potential to decrease the amount that is left for what we recommend.
That will be webcast, right?
Hmm?
That meeting is webcast.
Yes, yes. And then in addition, we're also working on the budget. And I know, for example, I think that last year this happened, I expect it to happen again, where there may be monies that are allocated from the ARPA funds that weren't in the original list. For example, the money, the second payment on the Black History and Future Center, that could be taken from the ARPA money, which could affect what's left over here. So I'm not, are you convinced what our colleagues are, what we're gonna be doing this group?
No, I do think that, the point about the Black History Museum, it could be very effective. I don't think nobody's gonna say, no, no.
Right.
it's worth it.
Right.
So, just
That-
keep that in mind. It's
yeah.
like
750,000. So, but I mean, there are other people who there's a lot of trading cards at the budget meeting and adding things in and saying, oh, we could use this fund, or we could use this fund. And so I'm not sure what will come out of that. So I'm just saying that we may have some really, if we have some really great concrete ideas to move forward with, Tiffany and I'll be right there, pushing for them. So, as I've said in private conversations, any specific things, because some of the ones from the ARPA funds have to be, contracted out by the end of the year. There's other kind of maneuvers one could do, but that might be a little bit different in terms of, more limiting in how the money could be used.
Thank you.
And you now know all that I know. Do you know anything else?
Other questions before you go off with your subcommittees?
Yeah, the conversation around the retreat, was there a conversation around this specific topic at the retreat?
Or of course,
Yeah, workforce development.
there was in that when we were talking about it, I brought it up and said, hey, we have people working on this and we want to be straightforward and let you know what's going on in terms of this money. And if it's all gonna be like spent on something else, I don't want to waste people's time and efforts on it.
Right.
But there was no like dollar amount on that at the end. And that didn't go anywhere. I mean, there was another commissioner who was saying, let's just divvy this up and $1 million per commission district, which I don't think is gonna happen necessarily, but like, that's just an example of where other ideas could come out of infuse the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, that's helpful. I mean, I think that, I mean, some of it for me kind of speaks to political will around some of these more tougher topics. Like, you gotta have the political will there, to support the funding of the program. If we do make a recommendation, are we really gonna do with it, and are we gonna actually make it impactful, as an impactful, even if we do come up with a good idea, is it gonna be carried through? So I just.
Other questions before we break? One thing I did is on the board over there, for those of you, if you're kind of in the brainstorming review and you're kind of trying to narrow down what some of your, the issues, needs or gaps are that you want to address. This is a modified Eisenhower matrix that just helps you kind of identify if this is something we should really move forward with. So the idea is you're looking at the impact of either the problem or the solution, versus the urgency of the problem or solution. And then depending on where you might put that in one of these quadrants, traditionally you would say, okay, these are the things we're gonna do that are high impact. If it's high urgency and low impact, you might delegate that or say, you know, that's another, there are other folks or, you know, organizations in the community that might actually be able to address that. If it's low urgency, low impact, it's probably something to drop from the list. And then if it's high impact, low urgency, this is kind of where the debate is. To really think about whether or not that's something to spend time on. So this is just a tool for you all if you are getting into conversations and trying to figure out how to prioritize. I do have some flipchart paper and some markers over there if that's a group you need anything like that. But we'll have one group here at this table, one group here, and then a group kind of can make another table out of what we have up here today. So we'll break and then we'll reconvene with about 10 minutes left. So at about 1:50, we'll reconvene to do some report out. What thing did you say? 1:50. Share some stuff that we can learn. Would you mind sending us an email on your list? It's going to go over. It would then be sent to you.
You still got. Same thought, man.
Right.
What the name already on, you know?
I have to, I have to make sure you have what you need by the end of the week. That's that crazy.
I was able to drop out sooner this year. The board has a daughter. Yes, yes.
So I think that ours sounds great.
It's just sad. It was good. I can drop out the water.
You brainstorm.
Yes, but I mean, but yeah. We have like here.
I'm working out some.
Someone would say, hey.
So you're the highway.
One of them, you're at some.
You're outside.
Yes.
Like you're good somewhere.
So there that, I did not, I forgot to mention this when I'm giving you the application document. These potential solutions, I had started to put them by, but there was so much overlap that I just put them here. So you might wait through that to see what.
Quickly.
The stuff is like on the line.
That's all captured in here.
It's all.
Yep.
Oh, this is a one vote. I don't know, perhaps there's some. Try that. That address. Well, but I, it's more, something on, right, that, you know, because, well,
And it's like. Is captured.
so, I just want to identify thoughts. I know we can't set the right.
Workforce and now
Like, I would let that to me. Something.
So that will.
Yeah, well, also that I can actually have it rather than. That's our okay. So I can be fine, it's no way it's going to. I personally did, you know, we're definitely gonna have an issue, but also have a very specific need that change a direction. That was that. So, I mean, I know there are various concerned or apprenticeships, but it's, anyway, I'm just reading that. So,
See, that's what I say.
And not a lot of overlap with some of the girl things. Feeling the same way, like the breathing the gas, between skill and education. However, came wages as well as the living wage, our wages aren't reflecting the current cost of living.
That's like a.
We can keep on preference.
And so I identify. So I did them over.
So she's
Great.
goals.
It's just out of your point.
I would say, it's and that's even the case, so I says I don't understand. If not, then Lisa said that's not right.
So.
So that's getting small businesses to have more efficiency and economics and getting services, whether it's accounting and. Right.
Yeah. So that's like, we're also one of these all like to identify succession. That's right. Raise the awareness. There. Wait. But then it's, you know, start writing.
Some of it's.
So.
That doesn't really
So anyhow, first of all, I first that I use work around business program. And so I slowly start to address things like.
So we're wondering about education, where
Young people. Most of the time, dress, as well.
incentivized.
You work around business training program.
School on partner. Right next to Express Dam in the rest of them.
Oh, high policy. I call it reload. That's out there. So I have to do. 2 years. But we actually contract people. Yeah.
Okay.
What are the shirts? Joining that or my passion. Develop it as I've done, doesn't not. Exactly. They're like related. I think they there's like these some things that a lot of machine looks like that. And started like actually, I can say trailer because business is actually that's very city and house that choice. Well, business so like maybe I did all this elevator. It's just a kind of better than people that get the power coming out for now. Please smile. Once over the sound, it's a lot of stuff just starting to training program. That's 1 foot and then the other out.
To be these trades, they can either go out to the workplace or become entrepreneurs themselves. So that'd be something that you would want.
Pretty much need these items.
Or give, funding to.
So that's another document.
And for a-
I guess like if you go back to controversial or obviously. Something like that.
Let's say one. So here's the thing about the children. There's 20, it's 24, that might. So I'm also chasing about like, so I don't want to know
Is gonna be. By them, but they're just pretty much about.
so here's self taking. So that's another cost as well. And would
Snapchat.
other what's funding, but it's what it's just for.
Really high bar.
That-
Where it's there. All of
Yeah,
that.
that's.
So much. Well, that's. See it. Service.
That would make you more willing, it's saying, I'll try to, I guess I'm just more of this. To what I'm getting from something. I'm not starting. Like, you're just one more thing I'm going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So. One of the other thing else. Revolving about that transfer. But that's like my, if we were to miss an expand. Which is revolving. It's like trying to get the students. Just like so. Yeah. Next to it's because they're not. They're going. Yeah, so. What the parents was really. I think the great thing about this ball. They found there. Just as something not like.
It's, that is, like you're talking about the. Part of it. Go on that, the joint. And anyways, joint development and, Winterville and, just, meeting, during the thing, and now you're just, again, some of the people. My daughter,
So that's.
one of the things is absolutely small. So that would be.
Location.
That would put another analysis on them. And maybe for some reason that's just.
So I think you have pretty decent salary.
No, they were.
Play.
Well. Maybe because I think it makes sense, something like.
Maybe I don't, I shouldn't try it, but
So
step, that's something very generalized. I feel like that's, you know, like a strategy of marriage. So. But anyhow, it's a funny way to do it. Also, we are going to try to understand how to manage this much. That's not understanding their power. But it's this way also probably out creation more. Should it get worse? Like, oh, I could get, you know, higher scale.
Okay, well,
At least talk to the city, nothing else. One that was just more broad, point about just broadly speaking.
We're thinking about it, kind of, impact, it's all businesses, it's fast,
Yeah.
and
Our dealing, you know, there's like rankings for most people. So it's, well, I'm not like, this for the hour, right, so like developments. Right, I can look out there, I sit across the nothing, like they're pretty small stuff and trying to create educational consistency in that. I started to think it's easier. Yes, all that it's not there. The last one was, it was popular, sort of, and then you were kind of. And then we didn't. But it's like, staying very. Cool, and it's the one we don't kind of understand the beginning, so. What are.
it's.
I'll sort of translate that as, like, I don't get all we were made, but that's straight. I'm not sure trying to. You said you weren't super close now. Let's cut off because like, yeah, we don't create consistency for that. Just like one. I was targeting.
Do that answer, that's the hard part, right? It's like.
And I will say that that's basically for the RC and her, that's absolutely.
So, ask a question, you're right, that is on here. Well, and then, you know, start chatting that, so overall, and absolutely will do it, there's not enough.
Questions, I would say, primarily because it's so expensive, right, all of the child here, and they, those employees, and child care's gonna. But we'll do that, and that's not important.
Yeah, I wonder what would it. Yeah, especially look at other pastoral said, let's see, like this is the small business development.
Right.
You know, what's on. And maybe you actually go over the top listing for this section, like a story that. Page wall or like retail issues that you know just are, you know, you have city trouble design their chest. Which comes here.
yeah, it's,
But others like what's, well, there's like the max, what it's like every day. It's pretty good, actually, so we can figure it's all predicted. Just the chance of myself.
Which one is that? Your, or is it?
So, what I thought. Sorry, goals were higher. Was then the joining of the client and like my sort of. There's two members since the hours. They get that out of the barriers and. Pictures. Yeah, that's something that been for a lot of video, for example, offers to all of it, there's some members, some of it's all. So like this. So the other point is how do you first like present for example, something. Those this whole year. That's not necessarily the real world perhaps and there's but and then just more around the speaking it's actually work from the more like businesses along with it. It's like, so we could, I was 6 days a week training. Then that relationship with their business.
Well, I think it's wrong. I'm like, that's a one of the parents.
That don't want parents to say, you have a program.
Is that just business or you could be the cooperation business?
Also still in high school, then also then nowadays was high school, actual functioning to business. We put it in as a members, I guess, student workers all as well, people, right? So
Yeah, it sounds sort of like if I were a kid, why not that? Or which one in that know how to, okay, like have a cell phone, like you have a cooperative phone, but it seems like I'd like to be able to say, here are the options that you could have starting a business. And sort of lay out both of them.
It's a procedure.
I don't know, the ones that aren't cooperative.
Okay, so for cell phone.
Yeah, I mean, that might be,
Yeah.
it might be good to lay out both options for different. And because then that would help benefits one of the other, you know, and have the board. So I kind of like it.
But it's like it
With the youth one, I mean, no, those are different,
structure.
just different business.
This year, yeah, certainly, I mean, it's really like, it's part of it, most like the. I imagine like most of your, that's I'll take knowledge. So it's anything, right? What is it that's well, also made it feels.
Well, yeah, the bigger economy events, and we're doing programs that are like organized. I wonder if it's so like element there. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of youth programs that work across community, right? Where you something that working with that. Yeah, the different things that work together.
Right, fully. So, whatever the other.
Outreach.
That's, life and us, such like that, and it's not a black thing.
Right.
It's something how.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the area.
So it seems like a lot of these things.
But, and all workers.
Incorporate.
Are sharing their information. So then come this. Started going out again, my well. Oh, yeah. Where to go. Yeah. So you-
Eternity for our children.
Certification, but certainly, you know, what that was actually. And so.
So we have a, partnerships, speaking of the development. And he's gonna help provide, property. And put in where he to depend on these capacities, build a partnership where they can, write a class. The funding is $40,000 per the 10 citizens, or it's small, it's probably 4,000. But it's another, these down, it's the $40. They're using the $40,000 to be promises that will be. Doing a lot of information, we burned a lot of stuff.
Started.
It goes back to that you said, we already had our infrastructure. So, you know, like this, that being something that's, those out searching, locally for those opportunities. Bring back in the fall, because I have, are, possible pathways. Highway jobs. Also.
Right.
In there for some units.
One of the
Works your job.
So every year, so even something
And
You're,
I
you're
was
searching
checking
where.
for yeah.
So some of these, I think they're focused, yeah,
We looked into to get a,
when they're.
I like,
I don't know, we're just brainstorming.
I mean, what they know.
All the resources that they are, like,
And so, I was.
like, I get, not doing this, young doing it, really young. You don't necessarily get it, hospitals, sort of, like, and life was 25, so having that specific focus, especially this workshop, having it's very,
So it's fun.
like, that are example, that their organizations that I can find, that have something that have been through this, whether or not it's someone like you, someone like economic coalition, so that the
Creating another channel, I've been working on.
voice girls, someone like say, the council on aging. So I'm sort of thinking, or so here.
But technology that I.
Then actually knowing about other funding as well. I wonder where they're gonna find that have other models. So giving them a starter to get that going.
Yeah, there's just some.
So we're going to.
And I get that. Then it'll be such a for sure, this is like, this is start up. We got 2 years that we're on doing it. This slowly down, yeah. But I like that, I feel algorithm, I really like. It's like, I've heard of one money out there.
That's probably.
Start getting going.
So they're on,
Other money. We're
not on Atlanta Highway anymore.
um,
They're behind, well, they're on Atlanta Highway, but now they're behind some of the new office buildings.
Like knowing the web.
The Chevrolet dealership, they're up there, that's like, where I say that, yeah, Walmart, but it's the same things that they do, basically like schools, like CPR, well, you know,
Yeah.
they train it, and you go through 6 or 8 weeks, to become certified. You do a,
Yes, question.
do a, I think you do it 2 weeks. And I'm sure I'm feeling in local nursing homes. And it's hands like it's really working out. That's probably one of the, I guess would benefit from saying we were looking at that a little bit fine. But we didn't do enough.
You're like, here's 2 or 3
Like a lot of stuff.
you what this is, but this is like, it should be like.
It's stuff that
Or it's like, this. You can also think about it as like, the program, whatever, the description of the program, what it is.
I'm sure falls in more.
And then
For trying.
business.
Yeah. Like that's perfect. You're from that.
Yeah.
We're going to have like, it's pretty. Church, I don't have no sense to that's what about it. Cool. Here. So then,
Yes.
no one's gonna. Yeah. One little problem, but that's kind of two, I guess.
I think it's also like, it's different kind of living requirements with the small business program. So that's, let's certainly one things like the or or it's small, it's involved.
We have. Told you. The church, my gosh, it's just. I can see support centers. Campus. So we have a center. Yeah, well, to John Brand. For John. Sure. March. I need to report on pressure. I said. Several years.
I did so much.
I don't know how. I was fine. That's the way I haven't been like that. Like this, so I was like, short. And you're like, bottom of the bed, you know, that's more what they kind of are. So. So you guys can do that with the news.
And
Side, like. Priority, yes. I don't feel like.
We have language where we. They really ask for wetlands and a lot of businesses research, no. The first of Georgia is business up over to me, just space for them, so. We were introduced, they have such a transport. Last week during the interviews, with labs. And I guess now, biotech labs, for kids, huh? That's great. I mean, exposure is the name of the game, and our kids need to be exposed.
Very close. Like the principles that lawyer and a lot of what system workers class session. They replicated. Everybody who has bodies with.
Oh, this is almost like.
So this really is our. Say that to. And show you. I didn't see out that right.
This is your aim school chambers, right? So, if the local government, and I'm government, I'm not without really, I'm reporting the current people. If it's the local government, people, if the also the environment, we're going to get out of the one city, once I know, Clark, whatever. If they come, if they can't, or if they can't, and they're out of please watch out, maybe the I think that's how it should get.
So that's a thing. Like that thing, that's what. So. The government is supposed to be really good. Right.
Yeah, the fall of the plant.
Spot to show them. It's on people. It's not. Yeah, like everything that we're doing. It's. We have the money.
Who's it aiming towards?
Well, yeah, for two.
The other day. You can actually be stressed. When you're talking about that, she's stressed.
It works out, burns, remember, we have a big. So.
Maybe you're on. Whatever. I guess.
Payday, yeah, so it's.
Dinner.
This is bad.
They still get the application better from Florida. Sharing.
That's very innovative. Go ahead.
So much.
I'm trying.
That you would see a small difference.
We can see things such
It's knowledge.
just like, we'll necessarily get them. I'm like, what it is.
Yeah, and even for keeping the track, you know, whatever you do, whether it's marketing, producing media for your business, producing a website, I don't even know what else, communications, you know, whatever, it just seems like there's a lot of specialized technology that I necessarily know about.
Related to travel.
Right. Well, even to run the job, like, yeah, if there's something that shows you where we market things, or, you know, like, classic city, visit Athens, and, you know, they're having a, now I've had something where they're telling me how they have technology that implementize and where we go in the classic center. Like, how many people who are at the classic center, then have a differentiated campus, like, I didn't even know that exists, you know, so new technology was that, but it's important, any, all these businesses. You know, is there something for childcare? Is there some online tool for childcare? Businesses that can become part of already, you know, we're talking about a cooperative for me that already exists, and no idea.
Yeah, so there's some like, just, it's like just platform cooperative on here. It's a tool to help organize parents to get moms. Mom students, right, for West States, again, so they're thinking with better research. Where this is using.
Is that really good?
And then the other thing is we're gonna see is marketing, because I feel like it's sort of just there. It's, I mean, one of the good things, it's like if there's some like big stupid ads for, like, there's no way to get it active. You know, like not everyone looks at the ad format or something, you know, but the dirt thing, the flip side of that is as we communicate with people on the tools and, you know, creating a like real or media based and whatever, you know, like, at least we get it out there to people. You know, whether
Sounds like.
for different businesses, so the technology that's involved.
Rights. Yes. And knowing like. This.
Raise interest.
Right. Right, that kind of thing, really, it's, right. Yeah, and it's already, there's so much more out there, there's, you know, it's like,
Yeah, it's big, got a wiggle battles there, like still. The best thing.
But we can have an opportunity for that.
Yeah. Last year, we even had education.
Send me.
Yeah, I felt like it's good.
Let's go to.
Yeah, like, that's my cable.
Yeah.
But for a single person. Yeah. Misunderstood.
Absolutely, the burden of money that goes into homeland.
I think on something like this. It's certain of that, it's like, it's a that one. Instead of like, whatever. It's, I have. It's 12 to the. So
Yeah.
that's what's happening there. The proper good quarters. Yeah. Very confident. Nobody were there. They actually. They're always.
In like the right way, like, they're gonna just get out there, or not, we're stuck and don't know what to do.
Our first one. I mean,
Okay,
it's still it's still a little bit, soft probably, but I do think that it's kind of.
Okay, good. Make sure to, I mean, we've got access to tablet in our Google Drive, the electronic version of this, which does, it has the clarity that we talked about last week in terms of measures and like all that. So.
So then we have something where it's like, enhancing and supporting childcare, let's say, for what's needs to next different, if you're a small business development, you have to over doing her work. What if there was someone who came,
$100. $3,000.
and they'll go to a person, all like looking to here. So, it's just, it's know about like childcare cooperatives or bring in someone who could, basically support organization and some child labor too. So, say, hey, there's a free program nationally that for the child.
So this is the
Here's
physician draft.
one princess bad, focusing how. No, just here's either.
I would want the black.
And machine has to
Say, and sometimes from our head, I was just a council on the aging, council or child, child center.
That's what I think. It's like ready to start in fall.
The training
Where you're going in fall. And now we're doing the process. But I consider it on lab.
Okay. If this is pointing out too many, then staring at them.
No. You got to have the order.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just go back and say what I'm trying to sell is property. I must. Coordination. So, yeah.
Well, we never, this,
Watch it, that's.
I'm gonna leave it out. I was just giving them some.
Yep, I got it.
High school students have access to this. It's done them.
Well, he's talking about.
Get it after
I can't, I know, the little place.
somebody.
Yeah. I think maybe like, it's like a twist here, like there just now, like resource organization, which I think probably, I don't know, yeah, it's where that just.
Thank you.
I'm sure. But no.
Oh, right. What's the other one?
Well, I've got to stay apart. The same way these, it's kind of culture and how. So we're. Certain racial.
I'm like, right, for college student, that just is that show.
That versus.
Right.
Like, well. It is, rather. See, it's like, how much he does it, like.
Yeah.
I was.
That was tall, so in terms of that higher risk to cover, you know, like I said, in the past, that I'm hoping that what we do as a county, I'm not source of data, I'm not sure how we can.
Which is, I'm very happy.
How else to do this? I mean, that's what I get.
Well, I mean, yes. I don't know what to say, it's more. It's not all thing. Yeah. Either. We want to. Yeah.
This is a letter from the patient that we got. Some of it is. Some of our, you know, they're still trying to find a way, whereas this really implemented. Some of the students that's gonna graduate after this been put into place, it's gonna be like major.
Well,
So that one is they were on.
I don't think we can create this child, what it is, so I'm especially, but I'm not finding a lot of these brothers. The whole lot of those, right now, there's not. Yes, a child for option.
That's what the chamber. This is what chamber, that is supposed to be, I mean, seriously, that's what, like, I was out there. That's what you go to the. Yeah, that's what.
Well, I was saying, maybe, well, I heard, it's all, you have to be in mind, I'm going to help with that, and there's one, what we're talking about, is what's formal on the other side of it, but, you know, everywhere I go, was, body pastors, something, close, categorize something, community. So you just, you know, that's the lean, something, that's what they do, they feel set, right? That was some issue presentation. Ways on, I said, Zoom call, so there's a names there, so that, wow. That was, we had to bring it down, through John. What are we doing? So it's worth saying, I have great. Or it comes with a big workshop, $3 cents. It's every robust job. They don't go back. It's just like, it's like, it's stuff, you know,
Well, I'll see what else. Sending tomorrow, we're actually,
Yeah.
it's not there. Plans, I know.
Right.
And yeah, we're
trying to figure out students a little bit. How do you? Science. Still, it's not that cool, but meetings. But until we figure out maybe, but like just split it all. Those, where they're not just something else. Chamber, that's fine. So this, I think this could come in with the. So there's stuff already. But we're still doing more. So that's what this is all. Things like we can start under. And I don't know what you teach, but. That's why. I probably both lines spoke to job.
Well, do you? With the whole club, was working with one where they had the, they had an orange, right? Giving to the job, which required such funds. Well, those was, they, it's where there's a whole lot of work. It's grad people, but it's 650, they got 30 kids. Jobs from all the like that day, which I think is great. And I think that's actually, let's say, it's not a little solve. The thing that this was about. Set ahead. Yes. So. Just. That's.
Well, it's something that maybe people was, that's why I was trying to find her. They're doing something. There's all different family people, that is like, for, but I'm not told off, they want to, let's just about the plan. It's kind of the price of it's on there. So. We just. But early on, fortunately, arts that, down to that, it's just like.
But they can.
We're going to. So.
Then identify it.
Somebody got.
Identify it as a love.
Yeah, somebody. Yeah.
They get in the middle school and then, okay, so that it is, it's the experience. I know that I'm gonna get my number grade present, so I have to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well. Yeah, I'm real low. I didn't, so that's very familiar with some part of the law. How could you add? You got that. Of course, we're about to get tired of the other. Yeah, it's the same for
First thing,
You got people. They're my slave. That's all right. I'm saying, you don't get it in there. Or no shape. So you started like.
We're gonna reconvene.
Almost. So that's one way to do it, but I have for evidence, so I should work. Yeah. So that's what it's about. Yes. Yes. A lot of it. That's very much.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of it. So.
Yeah.
Then I kind of change the line.
so creative. So creative.
It's just like you do.
Imagine.
What like why? Like ratings so out. Then that can take away. So, but it's way more. Serious.
Yeah.
There, you know. You know what I'm saying? We don't like that. I was gonna add on the ideas, so I'll be looking at. To bring the quality that's in fun. Then of course, oh, that's for. They are. It's like. Well, don't be more fun, going to get this to set, so I'm gonna be over, so it's all the hour. And you know, that's what I was supposed to, I'm already doing.
We have all the pins and all the t-shirts and everything here. In the split bottle, in the water bottle,
Yeah, that's.
the bag. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody goes. Look at restaurants, that's fine, great, I did it, and you decided that that's how we go. Yeah. Or I just think too long about it. Or things. Unless you own a restaurant. Yeah. Only that's
That's the option, you know, about it, small business. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's such a like a high.
You're fine.
All right.
Weird. Just.
That's our.
In your last 5 minutes, if you haven't started talking about what work needs to happen next in your work plan, make sure you're doing that.
So, you know, I'm just kind of like, oh, your actual skills, but I think we can talk about it right now. Start with it. Hearing that, well, the program will be. I think we're working on it. Three people to get a skill there on everything. There's one. Developing a child care.
All the issues.
Clear as or.
I agree. Yes. Will we be getting more information
Third option.
on entities that are in-house? Just for,
Or that's the most speech, so you expect to. So we have a lot.
Well, I'm gonna pursue green jobs. You know, I hear you thinking about it.
It's not.
It's. I don't know what other projects say. House. I don't know. I just.
it's so about 60. We have
So, we just like any that we're getting, that's when you that.
I think. That's a conversation that needs to be held, you know, later.
So there is the. Marketing.
Or one.
This is like, I mean, but like, oh, that's really. I was in Seattle, during two photos, all and all rings. Great front of Irish, which is full, it has to be. Well, for this, I think around it. So there's multiple problem. It's gonna address order that, yeah, share. the longer that's their state, like, the spot is.
What if you-
Something they can, one by, the people that go on. There's no real regular person there. I've been in a lot of these classes. If this is like a one week, that's like. All right, see, I think this is. Really fun. Actually, but mentor at work. And you can, so still, or, kind of, almost still, or, HVAC, specifically, or, their employees are doing. The goal is to have them there, but for us. Something right. Living wage.
Right, let's start making it back to the large group.
Where's the portal?
I come educate you about seconds.
Rose, you know, because we are focusing on the.
Ready for the time?
I'll get there.
The small rooms and I see.
It's now code.
Like, work that over there.
That goes. We were interviewing somebody for the program director.
The executive room.
That's that. Thank you. Really. But yeah, some of the guys are like,
Then he does.
hopefully they'll keep.
About the, announcement.
I've been telling people, but they don't release down. But,
Gotcha, gotcha, okay.
they said, okay, tell me.
Gotcha. Right.
Well, sitting here, I was able to hear all the different conversations happening in the facilities. It's really fun to hear all of that. What I'd like to do is have each group just report out about 2 minutes, 2 minutes or less of kind of the key things that came up during the conversation. As well as if there's some kind of maybe point of struggle or something that you think the other team members might be able to assist with. So, which group would like to get started?
Matthew, you have a lot. You have a lot.
Sure, I'll start reporting.
And, I mean, that's.
All right, let's see,
Here, Roger.
might have to leave a little bit early, right? So we'll let Roderick start.
So we were from the worker empowerment group and, several things came up for us. We started by talking about childcare and, the different ways childcare could offer empowerment to workers. Not necessarily on the subsidy side, but just more so from how can we speak to employers about potentially offering childcare, on site or some kind of system of childcare, through that process. From that conversation, the conversation came up about what is worker empowerment. And so looking at worker empowerment from the standpoint of, how can workers gain more insight and control over improving their own conditions, through themselves, not necessarily somebody offering them something or giving them something. But what does it mean to truly empower a person? And so that came up during our conversation. And then from there, we went to looking at certain industries and what offers could be made to workers to better empower them. So things came up like education, around your rights, being able to identify wage theft or discrimination in the workplace or harassment, being able to know what avenues and what things exist to be able to support workers in terms of where can I go if I have a discrimination case or who do I file a claim with? Where do I go if I have a wage theft case? What does the Wage and Hour Commission do? What does the National Labor Relations Board stand for and what do they do? What type of cases do they handle? What is the unfair labor practice? And so thinking about those things related to worker exploitation or workers being taken advantage of in some industries and areas are things that we think could be a potential benefit to workers in terms of building their confidence in their ability to recognize and then subsequently do something about these conditions that some workers are experiencing. And then we talked a little bit more too about how to distill that information into some digestible things like a pamphlet or a resource guide, and then how to disseminate that to the community, and what that potentially could look like, a marketing plan or workshops or sharing information about things that other partner agencies could be doing to benefit workers in this area. Yeah, and then we talked about some specific industry things, but I won't get into like all the details around that, but it was a robust conversation around like some of the things that happen within certain industries and how could we, through these things we just mentioned, like curb some of that or empower workers to create better conditions in the workplace. And some of it was also related to other areas like the thing we were talking about with childcare and the barriers to childcare, I think is related to the high wage employment subcommittee work as well. And making sure people have the opportunity to go after those positions, you know, through having childcare or other supports.
Y'all feel on track to come up with some recommendations within the next couple of meetings?
I feel like we can get there. I think again, this is a good start. I don't want to speak for everybody in the group, but I do feel like we had a great conversation today in terms of teasing out some more information, getting more into the weeds and things. And like, we might have some potential recommendations to be able to come out. Now, what's allowable, what can be done? We'll see. It's yet to be determined. So.
And
Thank you.
one thing you didn't mention was your idea about having a staff person
Oh, yeah.
go watch this.
So one of the specific quick things that I will share, I brought up the idea of having some type of compliance person or a community advocate, like when we're going through community benefits agreement process on like large scale development. Like say for instance, a splash project that's $30 million, $60 million, $90 million. If we are negotiating for a community benefits agreement with developers, could we potentially have a person there to be an advocate for the workers? Similar like a steward would be in a shop or something, how they advocate on behalf of workers and negotiating contracts and whatnot. But they are there mainly to make sure the workers get a fair deal in the situation, make sure they get good health benefits, make sure they're not being misclassified, to make sure they're actually paying the wage that they said they were gonna pay them when we were in the negotiating process. You know, so I think that could be helpful when we're thinking about how to be inclusive on these large scale developments. It would be important, I feel like, to have that type of advocate or compliance person.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, let's go to high wage employment.
Hugo.
Okay. So, one of the first things that we were, kind of into was, the goal of just kind of bridging the gap, so that we have a prepared workforce. So I'm trying to think myself out of my, out of school mode, think about as people are leaving high school, people in the community at large, a lot of talk has come up about like we need to upskill, community members for the jobs that we have, so that they can have higher wages. We don't want people living, working for wages below the living wage or having to work multiple jobs to get there. So we know that there's models. One of the things that we really thought about was, the sustainability. A lot of the stuff when it comes to workforce, you talk about like, well, so kept thinking, well, how would having an influx of money right now, how can we use that? And then how would that be able to continue? And for us, so what we were thinking about is like, you really need to think about like, an infrastructure that sort of exists and it's going to continue to exist beyond when these dollars run out, right? So something that was brought up was like the short-term training, like there's an organization that does it that I'm familiar with, that we actually contracted through the school district for like, welding and advanced manufacturing, and they also work throughout the community with other organizations for like welding, industrial maintenance and things like that. They have a very good track record for working with like students at like say Foothills and other people out in the community as far as like their placement. So it's not just like the training, but they also have relationships and being able to place. And it's because of those relationships that they had, they're, I think, able to get a lot of their students placed because they know what it is that they need and what they want from these relationships. But I think that, I mean, I can think of a couple of different organizations that do that for like, say, welding and industrial maintenance. I wouldn't say that that's like, so just forget about it. But I'm not sure that everyone does know about it because they're not living in my world. But then also thinking about like the, these other targeted sectors in our community, like, we know that Meisner's coming to town. It's going to be a lot of very, high wage, entry level positions. Are we ready for those? Are there short-term training opportunities for some of these other sectors? Like, not trying to duplicate, like, duplicate the services of like, say, an Athens-Tech, but thinking about the short-term trainings, like what are the skills? What are the things that, like, if we have an organization like the one that does welding, could they expand what they're able to, target for some of these other sectors? Or is there some other organization that we've identified that would be appropriate for them so that when, say, Meisner comes to town, or that we're able to keep more of these jobs being used? So I think that was kind of what one of our kind of ideas was, one, kind of some ideas of how we can potentially kind of get there and be prepared was, going and talking to some of these other sectors. Like, let's go talk to biotech about like, what are those skills needed? What are things that could be accomplished through a short-term training program that would make an impact, that they would make them want to hire one of these people that's been through a 6 or 8 week program versus just somebody coming off the street kind of thing. And that's from, again, knowing what they need, what they want, potentially identifying some other successful training organizations that exist out there so that we're not reinventing the wheel. Would need to, we feel like, raise awareness through kind of community events, media, so that community members know about this kind of coordinated effort for these different sectors to get them involved. Yeah. Am I missing out on something there?
No, we really did feel like as a community and with the work that this group is doing, it's being proactive instead of reactive. Because we know that this job is coming, we know that Athens is gonna grow. How do we get our residents ready to make livable wages in this new job where they don't have to go to Jefferson, they don't have to go to Brownston? Before I became a commissioner, I worked in Jefferson. I drove every morning, and I was still struggling. So how do we get our community prepared? And what does that, well, we know what it looks like. We know what it looks like. But where is it? Like, what organization is going to get our community ready? So,
Thank you.
I'm just thinking here from what you said on this, and
Just want to do a time check. It is
Okay.
2:00, so if folks need to leave, I understand. But let's try and wrap it up.
okay, again, I come back to what I was talking to Marvin, when I talked to a lot of people. Athens Tech with all its services, but I don't think there's one person who spends their time full time getting information about all the different programs and going into our community, deep into our community and making connections. Is there anyone who just does that in Athens-Clarke County? And I want you to know about the manufacturing programs, the apprentices programs, who's like in this embedded in here. Like, so in this dream that I just came up with, there'd be like someone who was like, had a 2-year grant position to get into the community and get all of these things and make connection, focus all the time on Athens-Clarke County, whether it's second chance jobs, whether it's those things.
That's Kendra's job. She
Right.
worked for,
With Athens Tech, just Athens Tech
no,
programs?
it's all different service.
Look at her.
providers.
Okay.
They're trying to
Oh,
touch it.
yeah.
I would never let that
That's
happen.
her job.
Go, concern me.
But is she spending like all of her time like out in the community, all those places, I mean, with Athens Tech? I mean, I feel like Athens Tech should have persons doing that for Athens Tech,
Well, we
getting all
worked
the Athens
very
Tech.
well together. I'm gonna say, even before she became an Athens
Yeah,
Clarke County regular employee, she was in the probation office. Leaning, we've been doing deep and going through.
All right, let's do a quick
Okay.
report out from the last subcommittee.
All right, so for small business development, we followed similar train actually to high wage. It sounds like we focused on sustainability of what we're thinking about in terms of generating new small businesses for the most part. So for example, we discussed like, you know, the revolving loan fund program example is like, that could be an area where maybe we expand, you know, the revolving loan fund or also maybe give it a little bit of potentially like some preferential aspect to it, of like we could preferentially give extra points on a scoring. If a business is workaround, for example, that could be a way to also kind of lean into that aspect of encouraging worker ownership, if we do that. And then also because the loan fund is being paid back, so we've had success rate with that. We would potentially expand that as one of our possibilities. Which also then led to the idea of like, okay, so as we're creating businesses, of course, you know, part of the way that it's also going to be self-sustaining is that we're making businesses that are themselves sustainable. So can we help identify with the anchor institution strategy that I noticed, I think was the last bullet point of the potential solutions, looking at sort of these eds and meds as potential customers for these new businesses that we'll be helping to seed, looking at the needs of like UGA, Athens Tech, Piedmont, St. Mary's, et cetera, to look at like, can we identify what are the procurement needs of those companies? And how can we help stimulate small business development that meets those needs? So that was something that was kind of coming up in terms of, you know, creating sustainable types of jobs. Because we have reliable customers such as in our anchor institutions. We also talked about different groups of people that we're trying to focus on. So we talked about sort of the two poles of ages. So like having both sort of like a youth development component as well as like a senior development component, where on either side, there can also be like, you know, startup assistance, that maybe looks like identifying apprenticeship programs, other types of, yeah, opportunities where, you know, if it's, with partners such as like Chestnut Community, Boys and Girls Club, the Community Council on Aging, Athens Tech, Economic Justice Coalition. We're hopefully being able to use those types of partner institutions to hopefully feed some of the people who are part of those communities into more targeted training programs that are helping to create these types of businesses that will be workaround, and thus more likely to offer that some of the things we're talking about here, such as benefits, which are more common among worker-owned businesses. And we also talked about green jobs. So that's in terms of like sort of inter-committee communication. I think it'd be interesting to know more about maybe like how high wage, for example, is looking at green jobs, and like the Inflation Reduction Act is one example of like incentive programs for creating green jobs, tapping into sort of this new green economy. So we'd love to have a bit more input on kind of that piece of it. Carol,
you did a great job.
okay.
Right. Well, thank you all. Really good work today. I'm glad you got to get kind of down into the weeds, starting to really think about potential solutions. I wanted to give you just a quick note that the document I gave you with all the notes in it, like I said, is in the shared Google Drive that I emailed you all about right after last week's meeting, or 2 weeks ago meeting. What I did is, if you scroll down a little bit, Conchandria, I've been adding new notes since that was printed. So I'm putting that stuff in red so that it kind of stands out as, oh, this is some new stuff that we might not have looked at before. And I'll continue to do that in this document. So as we have more interviews, at the focus group notes, all that kind of stuff, that'll be your indicator that this is new since the last time you had a printed version. Okay. All right, so the next meeting is next week on May 20th, and then we'll take a week off for Memorial Day, and then again on June 3rd. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? So seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you all.